In the incredibly narrow niche that is the world of gay dating sims, and moreover analysis of gay dating sims, I make no secret of the fact that I have a particular axe to grind. Years ago, I did a video about that exactly, and while I have no desire to rehash all that, it is worth keeping in mind for what I want to talk about today. A title in the genre currently in development that I have been watching with interest for over a year now, and one that currently boasts two very illuminating demos giving players an opportunity to see what all the fuss is about. Because within the niche world of gay dating sims, there has indeed been a lot of fuss. I am, of course, talking about Jock Studio. The third major project of this type by developers Blitz, Jock Studio is the product of a wildly successful Kickstarter campaign back in the summer of 2023 that raked in over $500,000 and hit all of its 24 or so stretch goals in the process. This thing has a big budget by dating sim standards, is what I'm saying. And more importantly, Jock Studio is making waves for just how ambitious it aims to be. Much as I can enjoy a good visual novel purely on the strength of its writing, it's rare to find a game in this space that leans heavily on story and character development while also devoting much care and attention to the gaming aspect of the experience. I have little interest in litigating whether or not dating sims, or more broadly visual novels as a whole, count as video games, but there's certainly something to be said for focusing on features like resource management and stat development as a means of allowing a new title to stand out from the crowd and possibly attract players looking for more interactive elements. Even if what's interactive in this case is at times something I can't really show off or discuss in much depth on YouTube, because that's one of the biggest barriers to analyzing games like these. We all know why they exist, but for the sake of content creation, I kind of have to dance around that anyway. With that said though, it bears pointing out that Jock Studio isn't really making any waves when it comes to its setting. I can name nearly half a dozen other gay dating sims that center around a university protagonist crushing on his classmates and occasionally other guys. And that's equally true of Ace Anderson and his fellow collegiates at the athletically oriented, and conveniently all-male, Olympus University. The actual premise of the game is a bit more novel though, and certainly more likely to catch your attention whether you're in search of unique narrative hooks or humor that leans on the fourth wall. That's because the studio of the game's title is in fact an amateur adult film studio, staffed entirely by student athletes, or jocks, if you will. This lends most of Jock Studio's erotic scenarios an entertaining meta-quality, in that the characters are not only performing for the benefit of the player, but additionally for an in-universe camera and audience that is, like you, paying to enjoy them. And not to be too heavy with the obviously capitalistic angle here, but that's another facet of Jock Studio that I've been interested in since it was first announced. Sex work can be a fascinating topic to explore in fiction, but it's often one that has to be navigated with a certain delicacy, veiled behind euphemisms and suggestive situations to navigate the usual discomfort with adult material and media, as well as the controversy surrounding the commercialization of sex and intimacy, and how those who buy and sell these services are perceived. Erotic games are especially well situated to cover such a topic because they're already explicit, commodified products. And I previously discussed another such title in this space that does so with a fair bit of nuance and consideration. Unsurprisingly, I have high hopes for Jock Studio on that front. But let's not get bogged down in anything too dark here, because leaving aside the opportunities for dramatic plotlines, this game can be exactly as goofy as you might think from the concept, and I'm here for that as well. Dating sims have long been a haven for tongue-in-cheek meta-commentary, on account of how unavoidably silly they can be even at their most basic conceptual level. That attitude is on full display in Jock Studio with its protagonist, who partially defies the genre expectation that Ace be a blank slate self-insert by making him a chronically horny porn addict. The jokes just write themselves when this guy stumbles his way into working at an adult film studio, which is furthermore a logical evolution of side characters from Blitz's earlier games that are, equally enthusiastic about men getting naked with each other, but don't ever really get to be taken seriously because they're still comic relief NPCs. Ace, on the other hand, gets to be an active participant, not merely as a visual novel protagonist, but as the one directing Jock Studio's various game mechanics, which, as it happens, are a source of humor unto themselves. Picture, if you will, a system like Fire Emblem Three Houses, where you're placed in control of a number of characters in a school setting with a variety of stats, both personal and interpersonal, that can be increased by various means, and that affect their performance in combat, as well as their relationships with one another. Now, take everything I just said, and replace combat with steamy adult media. That's what Jock Studio offers at its core, a metagame of stat building, resources, and minigames, all with the goal of making these jocks better at letting it all hang out on camera. That idea is, in my opinion, worth the price of admission alone, because employing this sort of incremental character growth for use in pornography is a simple but utterly ridiculous spin on the standard RPG formula. Based on what's been shown off in the second demo, these systems could clearly use some fine-tuning, particularly with regard to some of the minigames, but the overall picture is a solid one, easy to understand but likely difficult to master. Jock Studio asks the player to juggle a lot by dating sim standards, but it all follows a fairly straightforward pattern of systems that lead into other systems. Managing Ace's limited time and energy allows him to access more character interactions and opportunities for skill building through minigames, and those exercise and photo shoot events lead into the filming minigame, which functions as Jock Studio's mechanical centerpiece, as well as the obvious setup for most of the fun, naughty bits. Worth noting, too, is that the demo allows you to skip any minigames you're not interested in and still give you passable results. So if you're looking for something closer to a pure visual novel experience, Jock Studio isn't going to force you too far out of your comfort zone. And while I can't really show off much of it here, there's ample evidence that the game's explicit scenes build primarily off familiar affection mechanics and dialogue options rather than Three Houses-esque skill building. So even if that's not to your taste, you're not going to be locked out of all the really good stuff. Of course, even as excited as I am for the sheer hilarity of the level of erotic interactivity Jock Studio is promising, I fully admit that my main interest here is always going to come back to the characters. The university setting of Jock Studio is, as mentioned, not terribly original, and there's a good amount of stock collegiate archetypes on display here. But even just in these two demos, it's already evident that the writers are expanding on those recognizable tropes. The ones that catch my attention the most have to be those characters whose storylines have room to comment on their roles in the adult film industry. Like Derek, the consummate professional with certain reservations about the kinds of things he's seen and how this sort of work has impacted those close to him. There's also, more controversially, Bryce, who breaks away from the all-queer standard of Blitz's older games as an alleged straight guy going gay for pay. This is the first time these particular developers look to be tackling issues like homophobia, and the role of self-described straight men in these erotic fantasies. And as someone who's always preferred a certain degree of realism in my gay media, I'm definitely excited for the potential implications, as unpleasant as they might be in the earlier stages because that means putting up with an openly homophobic character. Opinions will naturally vary as to whether that's worth the eventual development that's bound to ensue. But if you're not in the mood for something that serious, there's always a Vaughn needing to chill out and let loose, or Leo having to stop overextending himself and take a break every now and then, or Zane needing to learn how to love someone and not just playfully flirt with them. Whether it's different flavors of character motivations, or specific sport fetishes that drive you, because there's certainly a lot of that too, Jock Studio can provide. And this isn't even mentioning the feature that I'm perhaps most excited about, which is that the love interests aren't necessarily bound to wind up only with the main character. The second demo takes the time to explore the cast as a group, and also occasionally breaks the guys up to show how they play off one another one-on-one. These suggestive interactions at their best highlight Jock Studio's promise to incorporate both sexual and romantic content between certain pairs of jocks independent of Ace, and to allow the player to sit back and play matchmaker for these characters. This is practically unheard of in the realm of dating sims, since the notion of love interest hooking up with each other could theoretically come across as a betrayal of the player's wish fulfillment fantasies. But in actuality, it's just another kind of wish fulfillment, one perfectly suited for players like me who prefer some distance between ourselves and the objects of our shippy desires. It's still far too early for me to even think about picking out a favorite here, but I've certainly got my eye on some options. And for what it's worth, the effort that's been put into characterizing Ace as a consistent source of goofy, perverted humor might eventually get me shipping him with one or more of the jocks down the road as well. It wouldn't be the first time I've managed to get invested in a self-insert protagonist, and with the amount of scenario variety this game is advertising, there ought to be plenty to enjoy when it comes time for the full release. If you have any interest in gay dating sims, which I assume you do if you watch this video, then I highly recommend giving Jock Studio's demos a try. The second one especially has a surprisingly large amount of content for what is still essentially a preview, almost enough to tide us over as we wait for the game to come out. When that will be is difficult to say. The initial release date of June 2025 was pushed back, to give the team more time to deliver a quality product. And I'm not complaining about that when what we've seen so far has been so generally impressive. Jock Studio represents a big step up not just for Blitz compared to their earlier games, but to gay dating sims as a genre. And this is a genre that could always use some more love. Stronger writing, better humor, more meaningful exploration of queer issues, and, well, the thing we're actually all here for. There is value in erotica, a fact that can often be obscured when people dismiss media of this type out of hand as nothing more than surface-level smut. And that's a big reason that I enjoy discussing erotic media as much as I do. So if you've played the Jock Studio demos, or if you're looking to try them out, what do you think of this project? And what are you most looking forward to in the final game? Tell me about it in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you'd like to see even more gay dating sim content from me in the future. Fire Emblem might be a major focus of this channel, but I do like getting to dip into other media from time to time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Or, hold up, I can outsource this one.
Au revoir!